And, dear friends and colleagues, are we ready to go again? I realized that the sting had started, and I've still got my coffee cup here, and my file is in that corner. So what can I tell you about the next session? I'm going to really speak like a complete beginner, because I don't have my notes. It's about circular economics and why it's so important. And it's important for multiple reasons. You choose what brings you to this and your interest into this discussion. For the first reason is that we are overusing the Earth's resources on a massive scale, almost twice as much as what's available. That is the definition of unsustainable and needs to be tackled. Number one reason. The second reason is critical raw materials. We kept hearing about them, right, all through the day. Renewable energy production is uniquely dependent on some of these critical raw materials. We need to look after them, harvest them with care, nurture them if we're going to deliver a renewable energy transformation of the energy system. And the third reason is the most obvious, which one hardly ever hears, and that's simply that if you have circularity built into systems, you will use less energy. You will use less energy, and that surely helps with the energy transition. So whatever floats your boat, be engaged in this conversation, because it's a really important one. Let's start off now from an academic perspective, a very exciting piece of work that Professor Arild Aspelund from NTNU is going to share with us. He's been looking at why it's so difficult for firms to actually implement circular systems, because the implementation is pitifully low. What's holding them back? Professor Arild.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you. All right. I am the odd one here. I do not study macro stuff. I study firm strategies. And what I would like to talk to you about here is, and I want to like to set the setting for some of my fellow presenters afterwards as well, is this. And you have probably seen this. This is from the UN Resource Panel. The orange line here is our economic growth, which we would like to keep because it's so well connected to our human welfare. The blue one is the amount of resources that we take out of our planet, and the green one is the climate footprint. And either way how you define sustainability, this is not sustainable. This is a huge problem, and we have to deal with it. So the solution to this, since we're here today, is obviously circular economy. Circular economy can at least solve big parts of this problem, but it also has a lot of other benefits. And you can see that from reports from the EU and from research and all these kinds of things, that it has a lot of other positive side effects. It can create a lot of jobs, it can cost significant cost, it can ease some of the supply challenges that we have. In the geopolitical situation that we have today, for example, it can increase both firm and industry competitiveness. So this is a Kinder surprise. It's great, but it doesn't happen. The actual adoption of circular practices is far too slow, and it is far too limited to actually solve the problems that we are facing. And then it's really interesting to see why we have this Kinder surprise of benefits, and it doesn't really happen. So what we are doing is that we're trying to understand why companies are reluctant in order to adapt to a lot of these kinds of things. And we call it the non-adoption problem. And we argue that the reason why this is so difficult is because there are some coordination issues regarding the transition that is always in place, is systemic, and all companies that need to do this, they have to deal with them. So I'll try to explain some of these things from a very simple explanation here. The first of these coordination problems, and I should say what a coordination problem is when your firm strategy, the outcome of your firm strategy is not dependent solely on yourself, but from the adoption of actions of others. That is a coordination problem. So if you look at the linear value chains that we have, the global supply chains that we have, they are one of the greatest things that humanity has ever created. and they are hugely effective when it comes to production efficiency. But what happens if an actor towards in a linear supply chain wants to make a big investment in a circular supply chain? What happens then is that the outcome of this investment is dependent on whether other actors will follow suit in order to make this circular supply chain complete and production efficient. And this is what we see in a lot of different types of industry, for example, in plastics, where we know how to recycle a lot of these kinds of things, but you don't see those mega factories because nobody would like to make those investments unless they know that consumers and suppliers and other industry actors are going to make the same investment themselves to make this circular value chain complete. So there is a hesitant and there is a motivation for actors to rather wait for other actors to make that investment. The second coordination problem occurs in transaction efficiency, because that is the other brilliant thing with these global supply chains. The transactions as goods and services are moving along those supply chains are extremely efficient. They are you know who the actors are, the contracts are standardized, the markets are very efficient, and there is a very efficient flow of information down this supply chain so that you know what you're dealing with in terms of materials. In circular supply chains, this is not the case at all. The actors are unknown, the contracts are unstandardized, the markets are inefficient, and it's huge information problems regarding the quality, the quantity, the location, and the deterioration of various types of materials that is going along these supply chains. And that is the second coordination problems that you have. If you want to set up marketplaces like this, they have to be balanced so that multiple actors agree on the standard on how this trade is going to be executed. Now, I was so inspired by listening to our Indian colleague later today, because there are some solutions to these coordination problems, because we see sometimes that it happens. In some cases, here today, there is a lot of larger actors, and they can solve this by simply being the leader of the hunting team. What we are saying here is that we need to get rid of a lot of the strategic thinking about the lone wolf that is trying to be the first mover and solve these things themselves, because these are typically the strategies that would fail. We have to think like a team of hunters that is trying to solve a huge problem, and we need to gather this team of hunters before you start the hunt. It's typically a poor strategy to try to solve this as you are moving along. So the analogy that we're using is kind of a hunting team, where you have to set up the team of hunters before you start the game. And what is characterized by a hunting team is that they are simultaneous. You have to make sure that if you are making an investment, the other complementary actors need to do the same investments at the same point in time in order to make this circular value chain complete. You have to be coordinated in the sense that you know how this market is set up to make it efficient. And you have to be committed in the sense that you know that if you are making the investment, then other actors will follow suit. So that is a completely different way of thinking strategy than that we typically think when we are in technological transitions. Sometimes the market would solve this themselves. And for a lot of the larger actors that is controlling the full supply chain, they can set these rules, and they can make sure that when they are making investments, their suppliers and their customers will make the same types of investments so that it's complete. We also see that this sometimes happens in local settings, like in Mo Industry Park, for example, for those who have been up there, where you have a setting where people are doing these types of decisions in a context of trust, then it happens in the marketplace all by itself. But most often we need to have specific types of regulations in order to make this efficient. And then we typically observe that subsidizing stuff does not really help. It reduces the pain, but it doesn't solve the problems. But banning stuff is more efficient, not very popular, but efficient. Thank you very much.